everyone. My name is Amina Chitembo, and I'm a leadership development coach. Very much for joining me again. And today I am in with the marvelous Kirsty Anne Charge, who is going to be talking to us about being a white mom and raising mixed race children, the emotional aspects of that. The topic today, white mom raising mixed race children, because it is just what it says on the tin, because at the moment we're going through a very difficult period with all the Black Lives Matters and with all the other issues that those of us that are bringing up children will relate to regardless of who you are. So one of the aspects of this that I looked at is, it all came from my children, my 7-year-old and my 6-year-old, asking me about the George Floyd situation, about the racism situation. And then I thought, kids have got friends in school of all races, and they don't check who is what on a day-to-day basis. But as they grow up, they get shaped by what they see. And this year is particularly important for us to have this conversation because of what has happened. And there's a lot of things that we cannot even, we can't shield them from seeing, but we also have to make sure that we don't leave them out in the conversation. And I think the most important thing for us, all we know, is moms play a very important role in bringing up children. And so some of these conversations, we have them at home or not. I just thought it might be a good idea to bring in somebody who is living in that situation, who is on one side of the argument, and bringing in the children that are in between the argument. I won't say on the other side of the argument, because they are, children that are mixed race. So the way I see it, the way from the conversations I've had with other moms is, as a Black mom, it will be easy to talk to my children if they're mixed race, because we are the seemingly victim. And I use that in quotes. I use the victim in quotes because racism is very much around white people and Black people, and the whole human race is affected by it. But at the moment, with what is going on, it's very much around Black Lives Matter. So if you're a Black mom, it might be slightly easier than if you're a white mom to deal with some of the conversations that are going on. So I just thought it would be a good idea. It would be important for us to hear it from somebody who is living until the walk, who's living in that kind of life, who is a white mom herself, and she's got mixed race children in her family, and how the conversations are going on, because there could be some emotional aspects or maybe not. So today with Kirsty, we are going to be discussing that. So before we go any further, I just want to ask Kirsty to introduce herself and tell us more about herself. Kirsty.
Okay, hi. Hello, I'm Kirsty Charge. I live in Reading in Berkshire. I've got 2 mixed race children. I've got a son who is soon to be 18, and I've got a daughter who is 20. So yeah, I've got 2 mixed race children. Myself and Dad are both from the United Kingdom, and we grew up here. But my partner, his family background roots are from the Caribbean, so St Vincent in the Caribbean. And I think his family came, I'm not exactly sure when they did come, but they have been here a while, and at one point they were going to move back and take their dad, but they didn't, they stayed. And so he's been living here since. We're not together at the moment. Well, we haven't been together for since 2006. We parted, and in all fairness, he doesn't really engage that much. So a lot of pressure is put on me in doing the whole talk around their race, their culture, to the best of my ability. So they do see their family, they do see their cousins on their dad's side, and so on. But it's very much a UK way. Like, they live the way like British people live. They do have certain aspects and so on. And I know that two of them particularly still go back to the Caribbean now and again. But I would say the majority of bringing the children up has been left down to me, and what I can give them from my perspective as best as I can, in regards to their race as well, as much as my own race, but to their race as well. So yeah.
So that's very important to understand, because one of the aspects as well that keeps coming up, which, you know, we could deny or we could talk about it, it's where you end up being a single mom, and they you know, a lot of conversations that have gone on. I was just watching something that was in the US where they were talking about the parental aspects of the children, where they have the role models and the male role model in the family. You know, I believe women can do just as well in bringing up the children and on their own. And I think you've done a great job from what I've seen on Facebook and things like that from your kids. So kudos to you for bringing up two lovely children on your own. But also there are some aspects which are stereotypical, because there are stereotypes for Black kids, for mixed race kids as well. And so they do kind of like fall within that stereotype, unfortunately, not by their own choice, but the fact that they are growing up with a mom. It's a conversation for another day, because personally, I have my own views on that. I think moms are the good role models. Children can grow very well with moms. But for the sake of today, we're just talking about the emotional side of things and looking at how you deal with that.
Yeah. I think it's good that so many people have come together. I think the challenge I had when it all first happened, I saw so many comments on Facebook, and it was like, where are all my white friends at? Just because you ask certain things like, oh, are you going back home for your holiday and so on, and that's racist and everything. And I was like, what do you mean, where are all your white friends at? Like, I'm still your friends and everything. And it was like, am I supposed to be liking all these posts? Like, I don't always like every post of yours, but am I supposed to be like liking all these posts, writing positive comments and stuff? And I was hurt by what had happened, and there was a part of me that was sat there thinking, this happens a lot. So why has the George Floyd thing, why has this gone so viral and so on? And I was thinking, because obviously so many people are off, they've got the time to protest, which is a good thing. They've got the time to be open and speak out. And for ages, like, I think I typed out a message to a group of Black friends that I had, and I must have typed it out about 10, 15 times, like really editing it, thinking, because I typed it out and I said, oh, I'm really thinking of you guys at the moment, and so on and so on, and I can understand that this is happening, and I know it's always been a problem, and I'm here for you. And then at the end I put, I'm with you on this, because I have mixed race children myself, and so on and so on. And then I went to send it, and then I was watching a talk, and then I think it was a talk between two people on Instagram, and they were saying, just because you've got mixed race children doesn't mean to say that you understand about racism. So then I was like, right, I can't even put that comment at the end of that.
How much do I have to censor myself?
Yeah, so at the time I'd already sent the message, so then there was a silence in the group. So then I had to think, maybe they're silent not because they didn't read it or anything. Then I thought maybe they felt that just because you've got mixed race children doesn't mean to say that you're not racist. So then I had to send another text saying, oh, by the way, please don't think that I only understand because I've got mixed race children. I was like, I just don't know what's right from wrong in what to say at the moment. And so that was that. And yeah, I was just I didn't know what was best, and then it was all about the protests. So then I thought, oh, I really want to go to these protests, and I did go. I did went, it was a bit tricky because I'd gone back into working in a school then, so it was more about the risk assessment of me going to a protest and coming back into the school setting. So I thought, well, I'm going to go, but then I was thinking to myself, but I don't want to go to this protest when this is your fight. Although I want to be with you, but the problem we've got is that when white people then go and protest, they might get to the front, and then again it's just like we're fighting a battle for you again, and it just doesn't seem right. So I made sure that when I went to the protest, I stood at the back, kept my distance, stood at my back, and I kind of listened. I saw my friends and so on, and I was there, and then I went to a couple more. But I was just like, because I know that in the past we've protested for a local mural in Reading, and I went, and at one point we were trying to save an Afro-Caribbean like club that we had, and I said, so would it not be easier if they're really not going to give it to the black community, why don't you find someone? And I didn't even think of it at the time. I said, why don't you just, like, I don't know, get me to take it on, and then once I've got it, I just give it to you. Yeah. And they said, but that's our point, that we shouldn't have to give it to you to then give it to us, so just because you're our friend. And then I could see their point, and so that's why at the protest I thought, oh, I want to stand back, but I do want to be there for them. So I told my children about it, and I said, I think it's important that you go, but obviously just go and have a peaceful protest. Because my son, he's a bit more of a bubbly character, and my concern was that he gets caught up in things sometimes, and my concern was, yeah, I don't really want you in a mix-up. If something happens and riots kick off, I want you to be safe if you're going. As it is, he's not that keen on crowds, so it kind of worked in my favour. But like I don't know if I said later on that my two children are seen very differently. So my daughter they're both mixed race, but my daughter is much lighter than my son. My son has also got very much Afro hair. So yeah, he is definitely seen more as a black boy in society. Oh, wow. Yeah, he's definitely seen much more as a black boy in society compared to my daughter, who is seen as mixed race. I'd even say that she's seen as just Cadence. That's my daughter's name. Just seen as that. Whereas I feel like my son, he's purely seen as a black boy.
And that's the thing as well, isn't it? So
yeah,
I've seen a lot of people that talk about the two things that you've mentioned here. So I'll tackle this one first, where you're saying your son is seen more as a black person because of his complexion and because he's taken on more of the black gene, maybe if we call it that way. Whereas your daughter is seen on the other side, she's just seen as her, and that in itself has something to do with, in my opinion, one of it is there's more expectation of mixed race and black boys to be in a certain way, and so they all get bundled into that, whereas the girls are seen a little bit more differently from experience. It doesn't stop them from getting the racist abuse if they have to, the girls, but in terms of when they're looking at, if you see any of the comments, which I think sometimes are counterintuitive, it's all about the boys, it's all about black boys and things like that. And even the brutality with the police, unfortunately, we fear for our black boys, we fear for our mixed race boys, because they are more likely to be stopped, they are more likely to be accused of something. Just before this whole thing kicked off, the George Floyd situation kicked off, there was a storyline in EastEnders where there was a mixed race boy and he was picked on quite a bit, and then he started kicking off. I remember I even commented on Facebook that they were going a little too far and things like that. But it's situations like that which they are real. And
Yeah.
this, you know, you said earlier as well that because, you know, what is it about George Floyd that has come on? I think the situation with George Floyd has highlighted what has not been as visible in the past. So the fact that all of us saw that video, well, all of us that wanted to watch it, I couldn't watch the whole lot of it, but I've been forced to see bits of it from different so even if you didn't sit there to watch the whole 8 minutes length of the video, you will see bits here, and then another media story will come on, and another media story will come on. And even on the day when it was broken on BBC, for me, it was very hurtful to be sitting there with my 6-year-old and 7-year-old and then see this white man with his knee on the neck of the black man. And then my daughter thereafter asking, "Mommy, what's wrong with us black people?"
Right.
And that is one thing that the media does not think about in terms of the way they had the best intentions in putting that message out there. But the whole thing, the way it came out, it was just nobody could be spared from seeing it if you're watching the news. So because of that, it resonated with a lot of people, and it opened up for a lot of people, it's opened up those that hadn't realized how bad the situation was. It opened up their eyes to say, hang on a minute, this is not right. Regardless of what this man, and I've seen a lot of, you know, comments about how bad he was a criminal, he was this. It doesn't give anybody the right then to just kill somebody in broad daylight. And then that continues. So then all the other issues, and a few weeks before that, it was the Ahmad Arbery one that we were talking about, though that one didn't raise as much, but it was still very much in the open. And then within the same time, there was the Amy Cooper situation. I don't know if you saw the Amy Cooper one, where it's Cooper versus Cooper. In Central Park in America, the guy that was the bird watching guy, where the white woman comes and says, "I'm going to call the police on you," and then she changed her voice and all that kind of thing. So there was that. And then there was Breonna Taylor at the same time, the woman who ended up being killed in Kentucky, just because, in Louisville, Kentucky, just because the police were looking for somebody in the neighborhood, and then her husband thought, or her partner thought, because they were not in uniform, he thought they were being attacked, and he fired, which Americans have guns. And then they fired at her so many times and killed her instead. So there was just so much. I think the anger has gone on because there's so much going on. However, bringing it back to the UK, it just made it easier for people that have not spoken about things they've gone through to then come up and say their own piece, so to say. So I totally agree with you in terms of when you're saying you don't know how to act because you don't know what to say to your friends. And it's so interesting, and to be totally honest, it's very eye-opening for you to say, when you said you were supporting your friends, and then people say, just because you have black children doesn't make you, because I did record a video where I was saying, and I did that because I was having a conversation with, because I was having quite a lot of open conversation. I have a lot of friends on both sides, on all sides, because I used to run a charity for 10 years. And I dealt with all sorts of people. So I don't have the demarcations. And even when we met, you and I, it was at an event that had all sorts of people. So but then there was a couple of people that kept coming to my posts and bringing on the "I have a black girlfriend" kind of thing, and then attacking black people as they say that. So this is not as bad as it is. Or it's just, it's like minimizing the problem, but using the fact that they had a black girlfriend or a black wife. So then I recorded something. I said, well, if you're white, you're my friend, but you have to understand where I'm coming from. If you're black, you're my friend, but you have to understand that it's not all white people that are bad. And for you that are saying, because you have a partner in this who's Black, it doesn't stop you from being racist if you are
Yeah,
racist. But that stops then genuine people like yourself from knowing what to say.
yeah, because my partner, recent, like, so we was talking, and we've had some real topical debates. It's interesting because I was like, because we were in quite a new relationship, and I was like, so the thing that's going on in the media at the moment, and then I would be like, and so do you find it offensive if I ask this? And he was like, no, because I know your intent behind it. But some people might not know their intent. So for instance, a prime example, like I mentioned earlier, I have a friend and she always goes to Barbados. Now, she was brought up here, but she would always class that as home as such, because that's where her family's from. So I would say, well, you going back home for your holidays in general conversation. Now, when my friend who is from England and she was in China, Chinese people would say to her, you going back home for your holidays and so on. So I think it's more the intent behind it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, but now I'm just at the point where, oh, do you mind me asking this? Just so that I can learn and just so that I can understand. And also, I think because it's a very raw subject at the moment, I could come into contact with someone that maybe doesn't know me too well, and if I just was to come out and say something that I would say to one of my everyday like Black friends or so on, they would understand me, but someone else might not. So that's why I feel like at the moment I'm walking on eggshells a little bit. I think it's eased off a little bit now, because so many people have said, no, Kirsty, I was saying, you met my friend Sabrina when we was at
Sabrina, yeah.
Phoenix.
So I talked quite a bit with Sabrina,
Yeah, and it was because she was the one that told me about this interview as well, and she said to me, I actually phoned her and I was in tears, and I said, do you mind me asking, like, when I've said to you, are you going back home, you haven't found that offensive, have you? She goes, come off my phone, please, Kirsty. Just come off
Get
my
out of
phone.
here, Kirsty.
This is a waste of a conversation. I can't believe you're wasting your time and energy on this conversation. So yeah, but it has made me think a lot more, and how other people approach it and so on. Like, so when we had a topical conversation when it was happening and I was on my lunch break, and I do work with some people that are very, this is my country and so on and so on, and I had to tread very carefully, like not to offend them in any way, but also to like not offend my friends and like back their corner and so on. So yeah.
What part do you as a white parent play in helping your children make sense of what is going on?
Well, this was quite interesting because I thought I knew how to handle this as such to a certain degree. So, and then like I said to you, like I saw all these things. So I went into my daughter's room and I was like, do you feel like I understand all that's going on? Like, because I said to her, like, I'm a bit confused about white privilege. I'm a bit confused about this. Now, I know there's some blatant things with regards to white privilege. And then I was thinking about me and where I work in my place at work. And I was thinking, I don't really see a hierarchy in regards to white privilege. And I've always got on well with Black friends, and I've had to work underneath people that are black, and so I've never really seen that. And then she was like, yeah, but it's little things, Mum, you might not even notice it, and you might not notice it because you've got mixed race children, because they see you, and because you're a single parent mum, this is the other thing that she said, so they see you before they see us. And that was one thing that she brought up, and that made me understand a few more things. So she turned around and she said, so you might have a telephone call and then go into a situation, and you'll be walking into the situation and they see the white mum and they see that, and then I might say, oh, my daughter's coming in, and then my mixed race daughter turns up, and sometimes you might not even see a change in someone's perspective now. And I'm like, oh. And I said, do you feel that? And she honestly said, I haven't really come across that. She feels like she's very well respected in work. They've even given her opportunity to progress, and at the moment she's going for a managerial position and so on. But in regards to my son now, it's very different. Very, very different. And I think it could be a few things. I mean, my son isn't the most sensible person at times, and he's got that bubbly character.
He's 18.
And
what do you expect?
Yeah.
He's a kid.
And he wants to wear a hoodie, and he wants to put the hoodie up, and he wants to walk about and ride about on a bike and do this and do that. And yeah, so things are very different with him.
I like the way you say things are different between the two of them, and you have a dynamic there that's a girl and a boy, and the girl is more probably on the white complexion than the black complexion, and you see the marked difference in the way things are turning out for them.
Yeah. And I actually, one other thing, especially with my son, I always thought that I would have more problems, especially with social media as my children are growing, with a daughter. Mm-hmm. But it's my son I've had more problems with in identity and his insecurities. And I was surprised by that, because I thought it would all be about the girl wanting to be this Instagram princess and so on. And I would say to any parent that to be very aware of that.
So when did you realize he was struggling? Or
I think it was when he was trying to, as he was turning into more of a man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was about that age 13, kind of 14 age group, and then it kind of plateaued, and then it's increased again recently. And it's interesting because it's like he's seeking, his relationship with his dad isn't the best, but it's like he's really trying to seek his black side of his family, mm-hmm. because he's seen more as a black boy. Mm-hmm. Whereas I've always brought both of them up as in, like, this is me as a white person, this is your dad, and I've tried to embrace both cultures as best as I can to the best of my ability. Mm-hmm. I've always kept them engaged with their family and so on. So yeah, but as a white parent, helping your children make sense of what is going on, I think I kind of like said to them, how do you feel about the scenario? So my daughter was aware of it. She looked on the news, she took interest in it, and her friends did, and so on, and they had open discussions. My son, because he also has autism, so his view was, well, that's in America. So then I was like, so he goes, that happens in America. And I said, yeah, but they're bringing it to the UK because this is a national problem, and like racism is national as well. And I just feel like my two children, they've not really had an actual incident of, well, my son did as he was in secondary school, like racism. And then I was thinking to myself, but have you though? Or is it that you just haven't seen it? Because I'm one of them parents that I brought them into this world, like you said, your friend is just your friend. You don't see it as, this is my white friend, this is my black friend, this is my Asian friend. You just
hello, you just white friend.
Yeah, it's like, this is Amina, this is Sabrina, this is Kirsty, this is Cadence, this is Justice. And I grew up like that. Even in my hometown, like I was saying, Woodley is another area just out of Reading, and it's a predominantly white area. but it's only now I was looking at some old photos, because during COVID I've been decluttering. I was looking at old photos and I was like, oh, I didn't realise that I had like 1 or 2 black children in my school. And then I was thinking about when I went to secondary school, and I did have some black friends, but I just saw them as my mate Elise or my mate Marcus or so on. And I always wanted to instill that in my children. But yeah, so even now, I think it was more of the fact that there was a part of me that didn't want them to get angry. I didn't want them to, I wanted them to be passionate about this, but I didn't want them to get angry, because I saw a change in my son, and he was the one that turned around and said, oh, you're white, you don't understand. Now, when he said that to me, that really hurt me, because I was like, oh, you've actually pointed it out, I'm white. But then it made me think, now I understand when people say, you're black, you don't understand. And for a split second, I was like, oh, how can you say that to me? I've brought you up in this world, and I've encouraged your race, your culture, and so on. I've taken you to, like, I think I took them to like a slavery museum in Liverpool at once, and so on. And I've like got you to watch this program and that program and so on. And I just thought to myself, how have you just turned on me like that? And he was like, oh, you wouldn't understand. But I think that's also because he's in the process of trying to identify himself. So there was a part of me that I was hurt, but then there was a part of me that was like, oh, I'll just let him go through this stage in his life. And I think that is important, but I also think it's important that they still have that respect for you. So I did pull him up on it, and I said, look, you shouldn't speak to me that way. I know you're going through this right now, but remember that I've been here for you. I'm not that way inclined. But I think it's important, if you want to have better answers to what's going on, you might need to seek your black friends and your black family to understand it more. But my daughter, when I went in to speak to my daughter sat me down, because I was like, the whole all lives matter. Because I was like, well, all lives do matter.
You put your foot in it, right?
Because I went in and I said, like, I understand all lives matter, and I understand right now Black Lives Matter, because this is an important fight that needs to be addressed. And she said, but what you don't understand, Mum, is, yeah, all lives matter, but she was saying, yeah, but now it's our fight, because all lives matter. So if all lives matter, we shouldn't still be having these issues. We shouldn't still be having police brutality. We shouldn't be having all this, because it's very rare that you hear of a white man's been killed by a police officer, or even like a black police officer killing a white man. You don't hear of it. So yeah, so I would say that as a white parent, I kind of like, I had to really sit down and think, and I had to speak to my black partner about it. And I even said to him, have you spoke to your mixed race children about it? And like, how did you approach it? And he said, well, to be honest, they have mentioned it, but because he's brought them up the same way that you need to respect all cultures and everything, they've kind of like took it upon themselves to they were just like, oh, okay. But I don't want them to feel like, just because I've brought you up that way, just to feel like, oh, we'll get through it and blah de blah and so on. I just want them, I still think it's important that they understand that this is important to fight for. And yeah, so
I think there are a couple of things you've said there. So one of them is, like, what response do you give? How do you deal with the 2 children that are experiencing such a different who are experiencing and understanding it differently. So one of them is able to talk about it, your daughter, and she has given you some education, which, you know, I find it quite difficult when some Black people say it's not our job to educate white people about racism. It's our job to educate those that want to be educated about it, I think, because the same way, not everyone who's Black totally understands racism from their birth, so to say. And I say that as one of those people that until I came to the UK when I was almost 30, I didn't have any thought about racism because I come from Zambia. I didn't have the bits that I knew about colonialism and whatever way very far away from me. And I knew, you know, for independence, the only thing I remember hearing was when my mom was talking about my grandmother going to parade with the boobs out for independence from the British. But the same British have left us stuff in our country that we use. So the way I saw it all this time until I got to the UK was very different, to a point when I arrived in the UK and in the second week of being here, I think it was third week, because I arrived, I experienced my first racist attack, so to say. It was verbal, but it was very deep and very detailed. That's when I started realizing I was different. And then after that, a few more things happened. Then you start thinking, okay. And then the labels start coming where, oh, you are ethnic minority and you whatever. That's not something I thought about growing up. I didn't grow up because I wasn't an ethnic minority. I was in my country and I was different. So if somebody is born in this country, their experience is very different. Or if they came from the Caribbeans or they came from Ghana per se, where it was very clear, and I'm not saying we shouldn't all be serious about it. It's important that we all, because we get affected the same way, regardless of whether you knew it or not. We get accepted the same way. But what I'm trying to say is there are people who genuinely do not understand certain things, and there's nothing wrong with, if you ask me a question about something you don't understand, to explain it. The same way I would explain it from another I'd explain it to another Black person. The same way I would want to be able to ask somebody who is Black as well, educate me a little bit more about the history of, you know, because now it's all in the open, the statues and everything and whatever. And sometimes you feel, I don't think I understand that. I wish somebody could actually tell me a little bit more. And I did ask that question on Facebook. And the response I got from somebody quite prominent actually was, well, learn your history, because something about a tree without roots, not knowing your history is like you're a tree without roots. And then I just replied back, I said, well, I am that tree without roots. So, but I'd love to grow some roots, if you see what I mean. But we just need to have a little bit more open conversation. When you mentioned about your son saying, Mom, you don't understand, I just want to assure you that some of those comments, it's not just about your child. We have to deal, and this is the difficult bit, because we're dealing with this issue right now, but we're also dealing with just generally bringing up children as a mom. So I've heard so many things from my Black children, especially my Black oldest, who will kill me right now if she hears me saying this. And sometimes it just takes you back and you think, oh my God, all these things. And it's a phase. It's a phase and it will pass. And, you know, a lot of moms, I've spoken to a lot of moms, and there are times when it just goes, dads in a way sometimes have it easier, because they're not the ones that are always telling people what to do. They're not always the ones that are putting them in order and things like that. We are the ones who end up being the bad guy, because you're the one that's in the forefront in telling off the kids when they've done wrong. You're the one who's stopping them from doing this. You're the one who's pointing out certain things. So there is that aspect of them just being children. And it does hurt, yes, when you hear it say you are white. And similarly, when you say you're growing up, you didn't even realize that the two kids or the kids in your school were Black, because for you they were just kids. And that's the bit about the white privilege, so to say. People think white privilege is a bad word. It's not a bad word all the time. It just explains the difference. Because trust me, there are many times I've gone to a meeting, and because I'm the only Black person in that meeting, I feel it. I don't think my white people are looking around and says, oh, there's a Black woman.
But it's you feeling it.
But I feel it, and that's the thing. So I saw something on LinkedIn where a white gentleman was explaining to say he had experienced the white privilege thing on the train. So there was a celebrity, a film actor who was in first class. And for him, the white person, he got the ticket because he was lucky it was a reduced ticket and he needed to get somewhere. So he jumped on the ticket. So the celebrity who is Black gets those tickets all the time and gets on the train. And because he's a celebrity, and they do hide their faces. I've seen a lot of white celebrities as well, where if they get on the train, they'll cover their face, they wear a cap so that they're not bothered. And he was just like that. However, because he was Black, the conductor comes in to check the ticket, goes right straight to his seat and asks him what he's doing in that seat. And he takes out his tickets and he gets upset anyway because he's been picked on. So he gets out the ticket and, he looks at it and puts it back, and then gives him back the ticket. And what does he do? He walks away and not check the other people in the carriage.
People in the carriage,
So then, kind of like the white man saw the anger in the Black person. So he said, should I keep quiet? Should I not? Why is he getting, and then they got into a conversation. To cut the long story short, they got into the conversation and the guy just says, look, I get told this so many times to show my ticket. He got asked to show the ticket because he fitted the stereotype of who shouldn't be in first class. So as a white person, your privilege is that you haven't done anything, but you are not caught out for being in that place. The same way some police officers have told people to say, well, we don't see a lot of Black, we stopped you because we don't see a lot of Black people in this area. You haven't stopped the white person that's walking along. You stopped me as a Black person. So that's the privilege that the white person has. And I think that's where that comes in. I hope in sort of like with what your daughter said and now what you understand, it's something that, you can find it easier now to sort of like explain to somebody else. Because there are people who still don't get it. And so it is a tough one, but you are doing a great job, and I know it's really, really hard. I did not expect this to be as hard as this in terms of hearing it, but I think more people need to hear this because we need to be having these conversations about how we are feeling about these things, how they are affecting us. And from your point, from you and other white mummies out there, I'm sure they've been told all sorts of things, not just by their children, but even the community themselves. You're walking with your child and then somebody says something about your child, which takes you aback and you think, hang on a minute, that's my child you're talking about. But from that person's point of view, they've just seen a Black kid. They've just seen a mixed race kid.
It's interesting because earlier you said about when you came to the country and then you noticed something happened. Now, I remember when my daughter was 5 and my son was about 2.5, I can't remember, we went to St Vincent and it was carnival time. Now, St Vincent's not exactly I wouldn't class it as like a common holiday destination compared to Barbados or Jamaica. And I remember I went there and it was carnival time. So I did think actually I would see a lot more white people. And I saw one other white family when I was there. And I remember I walked into Kentucky at the time and the whole place went silent, literally went silent. And people were looking at me, and my daughter said, "Mum, why has everyone gone quiet?" And that was the only time when my daughter said something, and she was 5 at the time. And I said, "Oh," I brushed it off, and I just said, "Oh, it's most probably because I'm white, and there might be children here." Because obviously it wasn't a holiday destination as such, like a common holiday destination. There might be black children here that has never ever seen a white person. And now I've walked in this place, and I didn't feel away because I just knew I'm going into another place. So I brushed it off. But it's when you are in a situation where it becomes an uncomfortable situation. So like in your case, when the intent was like, we're going to call you names and so on, that it changes. So yeah, that was,
you know, from my point, the people didn't mean, some of the people, they didn't mean it in that way. To them, they were being curious.
Yeah.
And it's racist to me because I'm thinking, how dare you? But for them, they're probably not thinking of it that way. We don't wake up every day to sort of like filter everything that we do.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. So how far does it go? What is wrong? What is right? What is moderate? What is not? There are a lot of inequalities that come with the racism, which have to stop and which have to be looked at. But it is a very, very difficult subject.
Yeah.
In that most people don't actually know where they are going with it. What do you think would be the best way forward? In terms of helping all of us in society to start talking more about race and to avoid turning our children, turning society into radicalism, because that's, if we don't handle this situation well, that's where it will end up.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot to do with education. So I work in a school, and we do touch on Black history, but I work at a primary school. So I would say we do the tick box exercises of Black history. So it's like positive role models, or what did they change? You wouldn't look at necessarily the full background roots of it in regards to slavery, especially in primary school. But I remember when everything happened about the Black Lives Matter, everyone was like, oh, we need this education in school, we need this education in school. Now, for me, I was also getting a little bit disheartened in that respect as well, because the national curriculum actually doesn't state what topics you have to teach.
Okay.
So it lists the skills and the qualities that you need to learn. So it could be time frames over a certain period. It could be to do with economy. It could be to do with all sorts. So you can choose a topic and then relate it to those skills. So what I find difficult with education is that so much pressure is put on English and maths that you don't have time for anything else. We don't even have time for geography. We're supposed to do things like mindfulness, and it's very much a tick box exercise. And I've enjoyed this COVID period. That sounds awful, because I apologize if anyone's lost a person through it, but school has slowed down so much that we have been able to teach a whole heap of stuff. Like the Black Lives Matters came to light, and we've done so much on it. Children made little protest boards. They've talked about why these people feel this way and so on. We've talked about so many different things. We've had time. The government put so much pressure on English and maths that they don't have time to teach anything else, which is so really and truly, if for it to change, they need to change the education system. Full stop. Which is your biggest
system. Full stop.
Yeah.
So that is many months or years of discussions and conversations to come.
Yeah.
What about we as parents on our own? Like you and I are having an open, honest conversation right now, which hopefully
Yeah.
we're going to share with other people, that other mummies are going to talk about. I believe this conversation is not about you are right, I am wrong, or you.
Thing I would say that should be instilled in children is to be mindful, to be kind,
Mhm.
to be kind, and also parents give children the skills to argue topical conversations and become passionate about it, and to empower them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that old saying of children should be seen but not heard, I think we need to change that. I think children have the right, they should be empowered to speak up. They should have the ability to talk openly about things and learn an understanding about the things that they're trying to understand. I know that recently I was in a situation where I think a child said, "Oh, a black child," to a black child. Then it was a white child, and they said, "Oh, he's a black child," and the teacher at the time just shut it down. And
Oh,
I was like, yeah, it was really interesting because they just shut it down because of the whole Black Lives Matter. They were like, I'm going to shut that down because is it right for that white child to have said the black child? And I was like, well, why don't we just talk about it? I think you've made it a bigger issue now because you have literally shut it down. And I think that's what we need to do is like, it's really hard to explain. It's like sometimes you can make it bigger than what it is, but I don't want to sound like I'm brushing it aside because that's not what I'm
no,
doing.
you're not brushing it aside, because I totally get
Yeah,
what you're saying.
yeah,
This is the thing. If it's being said, if the kids can hear out there Black Lives Matter, black people, racism, this,
yeah,
and then we tell them, we shut it down and we stop them from talking about it in a positive, comfortable environment, so to say, in a safe space, they're
mm,
going to start finding out from the wrong people,
yeah, yeah.
and
So
they're
I
not going
just,
to find out the
yeah,
right things.
yeah. I think from my perspective as a white parent, I would say it's important to have those discussions with other races. If you are not sure, find out.
Yeah.
I know that I have got some, because when I got with my partner, their dad, at the time, there was a little bit of prejudice against me being with a black man.
Mhm.
So sometimes I find it easier to talk. It's about getting the level of having educated talks with, I suppose, educated people. Um, so there's certain black women that I know I can approach it with when I want to have certain questions answered, but I know that sometimes I felt awkward in other situations with some black women, and it's been like, as if to say, well, I don't want to tell you because it's kind of, oh, I don't know how to, I've just felt awkward in some situations with some black women.
Mhm.
Be wise to what you research on. So like sometimes, like looking in social media, sometimes it can be misleading. It's about getting the right information, and if you need help, ask someone, I
Yeah.
would say. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So without having many people coming now to inundate you with questions, where many white mummies coming to inundate you with questions, Kirsty, what advice would you give to moms who are in your position? So white moms, especially those moms that have little kids right now, or maybe are even just expecting, they are excited, they have babies, they are mixed race babies.
There's a part, like I said, you want to bring them up in this world of, not that it doesn't exist, but just love one another regardless. But one day, like you said, it is going to come up, and it's just, I don't know, it's like you've got to be prepared for it, and it's more about educating yourself and researching and talking to other people. I would say that was the most key thing, is don't just hide away from it. But also, I would also say, don't be this person that's just going to get so heated over it as well. I think it's important to be passionate. So, for instance, there was a day, I remember once, my daughter, she was at school, and there was two incidents. So my daughter was at school once, and the school that she goes to is quite a Christian Catholic school, and it's got a high black community black and Polish community. And they were a group of children talking in class. Now, the majority of the class are black children. Anyway, so a group of them got held back. And my daughter came home one day, and she turned around, she goes, yeah, we was talking in class, and some of us got held back. And she goes, and I think it was a racist thing. And I said, oh, right, so who was talking? So she reeled off all the names, who, out of all her friends, they were all black and mixed race. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she turned around and she said, so I think they was being racist. And I've gone, well, you've just told me that all those ones were talking. So I kind of said to her, I don't actually agree with the fact that you're pulling that, like the racism, the race card, yeah. So I kind of put her in her place, and I said, that's not okay to do. If there was white people talking in the class and they didn't get held back, that's a different story. But you've told me that the people that were talking in the class were you and your mixed race and a couple of black friends. So yeah, you were told that's what you have to do. You do have to stay behind, and you have to deal with the consequence. So I think it's important to be fair, but to be open-minded. So the other scenario that I'll tell you about is my son went to a different school, and the school that he went to was quite a predominantly white school, and a secondary school. And I remember one day, my son struggles in school, and he struggles with concentration and so on, but he's never really become that angry, violent child in school. Mm-hmm. And one day I got called into school, and they said, oh, it's because this white boy called in the N-word. Anyway, so I was like, okay. And then they said, oh, there was no witnesses. And I said, but my son, very rarely, he was crying. And I said, I wholeheartedly believe that was said. And they said, oh no, some people have said it was a different word and he's got it confused. So anyway, at that point, I was really angry, and I said, I actually believe that this has happened. Anyway, so I thought, but you know what, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe my son was confused, maybe, and so on. And then about a year later, the same boy, and the incident happened again. And I actually said, no, I'm sorry, but this has happened again, and it's with the same child, and he's responded in the same way, and you've not had any incidents in between that time of him being angry or violent and voicing his opinion. And I said, so I'm sorry, I actually do think that was said. So in that case, I think I was fair in the fact that, okay, fair enough, we'll give you this opportunity, but if it happens again, I'm sorry, that has got to be a racism situation. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a matter of being very aware, and being aware and being fair, being understanding, and also just being passionate about it when you need to be passionate about it. But it's your duty as well. to have an understanding, yeah, and to embrace it, because sometimes by not embracing it, that's where the relationships can break down. Yeah. And yeah, so I think it's just really important, and as a mum, to be supportive, and listen, because often, especially now with the way of the world and how busy it is, it's listening is key. Definitely listening is key. And it's also like just having those things around the house, so books with a variety of storybooks, a variety of different music, experience different foods, visiting different places of interest. Yeah, I just think it's, yeah, and not even like just because I remember I've got mixed race children, but I've brought them up. I've taken them to a Hindu temple before. I've taken them to, I think they went with the school to a Jewish synagogue. I've taken them to a different carnival parade, or I've got them to try different food from all over the world. So it's not just a black and white thing. Just because I've got mixed race children with a black partner, I feel it's important to embrace. I just feel it's important to embrace the diversity that we've got, especially in the UK.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very good point to sort of like end on, and I just want to add to that and say it is very important for us to celebrate the diversity that we have in the UK. When I said I was moving to Leicester, and this is a black person says, I can never live in Leicester because there are too many Asian people. You're being racist. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing. Sometimes I feel that when it's very black and white, they don't see it. Sometimes I find that some people don't see it within another place. So like you said, a black and an Asian. And also, like, I remember once someone saying to me, oh, all you know about is afternoon tea and cucumber sandwiches. And I was like, I know a few other things. But the thing is, I think for me, I see that as just being judgmental. When I think about racism, because some people could say, well, that's being racist as well. But I think when I think of racism more, I think to myself,
and your children, whether you're a black or white parent, your children are eventually going to have to experience that at one point.
Yeah.
The only difference is, from a white parent's point of view, as you said, Kirsty, is you start early, you talk to your children, you raise your own awareness first. You learn as much as possible, and you open them up to the world, not just to the other race, but to the world generally, to other cultures, so that they appreciate other cultures, they respect other cultures, they respect their friends, and they look out for other people as well. Because it's one thing to say, oh, it's not me, or whatever it is, but it's helping them to understand that sometimes this thing is just about humanity, as a lot of people are saying. I think it's important for all of us to have the conversation. I think it's important for all of us to talk to our children, but most importantly, I think as parents, from all sides, we need to be to be okay with not knowing enough.
Yeah.
As a black parent, I can't pretend to know it all. As a white parent, why would I expect you to know it all? Thank you very much for you, to yourself and to your kids, for allowing us to have this open conversation, because a lot of parents are not very sure how it's going to turn out, and some kids don't want their parents talking as well, some partners and things like that. But you've been very open. We've had a really rich conversation. Thank you very much, Kirsty.
All right.